usually pushed a big release in December, and now we come back and we collect all the feedback and we reorganize and plan out the rest of the year. This year's summit was, a lot of it was production focused. I know you guys were at the obstacle while going through the studios. Tell us what that process was like. What was that like?
Yeah, with the distribution of our disciplines, there's a benefit to getting everybody in the same place, which is why I think that term summit became big for many, many years, depending on what it was we were trying to do or where the game was at or what the state was at. On the production side or on the planning side or the project leadership side, it was important for us to get in a room and just solve some problems as quickly as possible. And there's benefits to working remotely, and there's benefits to working together. And I think we had started doing these summits for production specifically last year, and so this was kind of our third one or our next round of it. And it was a great time to evaluate last year what we were successful at, what the team was really doing well, what the team needed more from, how we could support them better, how can we engage our community more, right? Just kind of what is that next iteration, not to change for change's sake, but just where, all the information we now have and the experience we now have in this environment, what's the next step and where do we want to take it? And so that was a big focus of the summit for sure. Was and then for me, Dennis had just joined the project 6 months ago. So getting him out in the rest of the studios and working alongside everybody, and I think that was for me a small perk to doing it again. But the benefits of just are very. They're great to set the stage for the year or for the next 6 months, or just to go, okay, we all come together, we've solved these 10 problems, okay, out there and now start making change.
Absolutely. And there's so many pubs in the UK that we also find out, I bet, I mean, you have the experience here, that the expense report goes through much easier if it's called a summit and not a pub crawl, right? It's a little bit easier, so that was...
Somehow I don't think the UK have any trouble approving an expense report that says pub on it. But, all right, so one of the big talking points for 2018 so far is how we've restructured our production to hit these quarterly release dates. Before we get into what we did this year, the changes, let's talk a little bit about what we were doing before so that we can understand these changes more. How were we approaching production before this? What were its strengths and weaknesses? Why was that the way that we were doing things then?
Sure. I mean, I think we should clarify it's not a reorg or a restructure. Mm-hmm. Those generally have negative connotations, so I want to make sure that's clear. That's not at all what happened. It was more of a look at what the strengths of what we've been doing for the last couple of years. As we scaled up in certain departments and as we brought in certain talent, it was now about going, what could we divide this in to make sense, right, to make this go to the next stage? And we realized, and Crow can talk even more to this, Dennis Crow, I tend to call him Crow. We have a couple Dennises, so Crow.
I think I'm Crow on the spectrum.
Great, so he's Crow. Was what needed to be based around the features to allow for fast iteration, and what needed to be based around pipelines, and I think Dennis can even speak more to that. But this was building on last year. We'd already done some of this at the same time last year of going, let's get people into strike teams or into goal teams, or there's all these very production-y words to use in this same idea. Get people together, let them work together, work quicker, and just as the team has shifted and the responsibilities kind of ebbs and flows as we bring in talent in certain areas or in certain teams, we have to constantly evaluate this stuff to make sure it works well. Like, I think back to the point of the expense report, as far as that joke goes, there's a human element that I was mentioning at the beginning of this. These are humans making this stuff. And the more we work together, the more we work alongside each other, the more we know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And there's, I've mentioned this multiple times when you're forming any kind of team, we're in this phase now of performing. We know what people can do. We don't question where that information should go, or what part of the team should work on it. Now it's about doing it, getting it done, iterating quickly on it. And we'll go through that, I think, frequently. We do it all often, but I'm sure next year we'll go through that again based on what we're doing this year.
We continue.
You are approaching simulation
for sure. And as the product evolves and as we get more out and we're working really close with the community, they get more content. 3.0 was a big one for us to go look at all this content and how it all came together, what's the next steps for us, and what we can kind of, a lot of the R&D we've been doing, which is really what a lot of that stuff is. That's people are playing with R&D. If this was any other game, people wouldn't be playing that stuff. That would be just us going, oh, cool, this looks really fun, okay. Right, but don't tell anybody yet. But look how fun this is. Okay, there's a lot of broken stuff. And so we get the R&D alongside the community. It's really unique. It's a lot. It's a live game, but we're learning alongside them, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, just to echo that, I would agree. I think one of the things that we would probably want to say, though, is it's not necessarily a production change. Mm-hmm. It's a development change. And again, it was not necessarily a reorg. What it is understanding where we're at in development and fitting how we work to the work we need to do. So it's not about we have these ideas of how we want to make our game. It's here's right now where the game is at. This is what's working really well. This is on all the research that we did and the experimentation that we did and all the things that we have made and shipped. We've learned a lot. The project's in a different stage. And so when the project's in a different stage, you should say, okay, are there things that we can do now that it's in a different stage that more match what we're ready to do? So, we know how to make a ship. We know how to make these characters. We know how to make cinematics. We know how to make these features. So now that we know that, we don't have to experiment. We don't have to be in the experimental phase that was required. To make something new, there's no roadmap. There's no manual for how to make this game, right? So we had to figure that out. We had to research that, come up with all these ideas, try out things. Try things and then you get a result and that's not what you expected. So try something else. Okay, that's a little bit closer. So now that we've tried a bunch of things and we kind of know what works and what doesn't, and now we have a base of knowledge and we have a great tool set, we have a great engine and all these type of things, the project's just in a different phase where it's, okay, now we're ready to we know the features we need. So we need to reorganize how we develop, or we need to have people work more closely together on, this half the room, you guys can huddle up and go do features. And let's organize into some groups so you guys can kind of work together and just go hit these features. The guys over here, you guys need to be producing a ton of exceptional quality content. And you need to be doing it in a very streamlined way where everybody knows what's going on, everybody can see what's going on. And then the guys over here, we know what features we want. We know what content we want. We have a tremendous amount of it already made. So now what we need to do is evolve our tools to support all that. So you couldn't have done all this in those three groups in terms of what each person needs to do until you had done the research. Because if you just come up with that piece of paper and you say, we're gonna execute this piece of paper, so let's just all go do it, well, now we're following a plan. And the idea of Star Citizen or any great game is not how closely can you follow the plan. The plan is the start. It's about making a good game and learning and adapting as you go. This is an adaptation as we go.
Yeah.
A pretty regular evolution that happens in a lot of game development. You have to go through then to get to where you are now.
Totally. Yep. Absolutely.
So let's talk about what we are doing now, though. In ATV and studio reports, we throw out a lot of terms like Scrum and Agile and 2-week sprints and stuff like that.
The buzzwords.
Yeah, take us through that. What is Scrum? What is Agile? What are the 2-week sprints? What are we doing?
Absolutely. Well, every time I mention the name, they send me a check. So just keep doing that. That's why I came here. No, it's good. But basically, so here's what it's all about. For some things so again, it's about matching what we need to do with how we're going to do it. You use a hammer to hammer a nail, right? So we have these features that we want to build. So whether it's character customized, or whether it's just, the service beacon, the distress signal, or whether it's improvements we want to make to the PMA, or any number of features, and people know them, we put them live. Those features, we generally know what they are, but we don't know if we don't know if that's a month of work and then it'll be fun, or if it's 6 weeks of work that then it'll be fun, or 7 weeks. It's really hard to schedule fun. So what we say is, let's get a group of people together who know it. Let's give them 2 weeks to go run off and do stuff and try it out. And then at the end of 2 weeks, they have to show us what they've done. And we, Chris is in the room, we have these great meetings where we, every Scrum team gets, meets with him and talks about their feature and shows it, and all the directors are there. So basically, we can't schedule when it's going to be fun, but we know the more cracks we get at it.
Yeah.
The closer we'll get at it, and it'll become fun over time. And then any team can only ever really get 2 weeks. Like if someone doesn't have the greatest idea, not all of our ideas are great. They're trying something and they get a result, and it's not exactly what fits with the game. Whatever, they tried something and that's good. Then we can bring them back every 2 weeks. So really, for feature development, we don't know exactly how to make it. So that's what Scrum's about. It's about getting a small group of people together. A couple programmers, designer, a dedicated tester, an artist. If they need an audio guy, bringing them in. Letting them go for 2 weeks, operate a little bit like a startup maybe, so maybe like Old Days LA, right? Make a whole bunch of Old Days LA, little tiny teams, and let them go for a couple weeks, bring them together. And I don't know if they'll be done with a feature like character custom. When we began this, we didn't know if character customizer was going to take 3 sprints. And again, sprints are 2 weeks each. So we didn't know if it was going to be 6 weeks or if it was going to be 8 weeks. But what we did know is if we gave them a quarter to do it in, so comes back to our quarterly schedules, that we would be better each iteration on it. And by the end of that, we would have something that we would feel pretty good about. And so in terms of matching the development, that makes sense for our features. It makes a ton of sense. We get things out to the community. So that seemed to fit this stage of the project. It also seemed to fit the culture of this company, which I'm learning about and I love. And it's it's a band of pirates and it's fantastic. But the other thing is, if we've got to make, and I'm going to throw out a number here. This number's not exactly correct. If we've got to make 200 characters, right? And let's say we're halfway down with them, but we've got to make a huge amount of characters. Well, we wouldn't ask them to work in 2-week, increments, right? Like it'd be really hard to write up a narrative bio of a character and figure out gameplay design of it, and then get a concept, and then model it, and then rig it, and then set it up, and then go get the animation done, then go get the AI done, then go implement it in game. You can't do that in 2 weeks. There's no way you could fit that. So it's not about, oh, Scrum is great, it's a buzzy word, let's use it for them too. It's, no, well, they actually all know what they need to do. What they need is the time and context. So what they need to do is say, we're going to be working on these characters in the priority order, and we're all going to work on them, and we're all going to be same team, we're all going to be thinking about the same list of characters that we need to put out this year. And we're all going to basically work more together. We're going to work on unified priorities. I was making fun of this, almost like a Chipotle burrito line, where people go step by step through it. But what's great about that is it's super clear what goes on. And also, you get your burrito faster than if you had to wait for it for someone to take your order. But that kind of work fits that kind of, that kind of style fits that kind of work. And then when you go to your departments who are making tech, that's a different style of work. So what we've done this year is said, we just like those Scrum teams, the more cracks we have at it, the more iterations that we have, the better we'll be. It's like anything else. The more times you practice something, the better you'll be at it. So last year, we had a lot of stuff we were researching, a lot of things we were trying, a lot of things that we wanted to do. And so we said, okay, here's a big group of work we want to get done. And we went through and we got that work done, and we got a result out of it, which was a whole lot of really great features, but it was really hard to estimate, and it ended up, we got the work done, but since you can't schedule fun, basically we came out end of last year. This year we said it would be more effective because we get more iterations in. Imagine if we had 4 releases in the same time period of 1. Now all of a sudden we're doing 4 experiments instead of 1, 4 practices instead of 1. And we time box it instead. And we say, whatever we can get done in this time period, we're going to send out. And then we're going to do it again, and then we'll send it out. And perhaps the first one or the second one, we're going to learn things. We're not going to maybe get everything done that we thought we would. We'll get more done than in some areas and less in others. But we'll learn each time. And the community will learn, and you guys out there will learn it also that, what does it mean to basically say, oh, we're going to have these regular releases coming out, and some things won't be done. Some things will be farther than we ever thought they could be because we'll have learned. But really what it is we know the more cracks we have at, the more times we can send things out, the better. And so in order to enable that, in order to be able to release things 4 times a year, we had to really say, okay, we've got to shrink everything that we did from the I have an idea on the whiteboard to it's in the game and working. We had to shrink that down to basically from a whole year into a quarter. And in order to do that, we have to break the features up smaller. In order to do that, we have to find ways to work better together, which goes back to the new tooling and kind of the Scrum and Agile, and these are some of the things we can get into for sure. But basically, everything that we're doing is to make the game better. The more cracks we have at it, the more iterations, that'll make the game better. We'll find the fun sooner. And in order to make these quarterly releases worthwhile, we need to make sure that they're an asset to the team, and the team's working in a great way. But it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I'm excited that we'll be releasing, on time, which is a really great thing. And we're going to learn a lot, and curious to see what people think about it. But I think overall it'll be a positive.
Totally.
All All right. One of the things that we put out this year in line with this was our new public roadmap. Now, the public roadmap is another evolution of something we were doing last year, which